take your time to understand things, because it is not necessarily something you get with the first time you hear about it, but you have to think about it, you have to work on it, and this needs time, this needs actually work. This is the added value. I provide the knowledge, the information if you want. I combine it in a certain way that you can understand it. But you have to make the knowledge, the understanding, you have to make it out of this information. In the extreme case, I know myself, I love this. I download documents from the internet, and I think that's it. I have it there. This is a trend. It's a sad trend, actually. We put something on nice slides, information in small pieces, and we kind of sometimes immediately we know what it is, but to understand what it is takes more time, because it is not just this information, but it is a complex thing of understanding, establishing yourself the connections. You have to read the textbook, but don't think that you simply get it from there. I don't know if you get it from here. At least you have to think about it when you read the textbook, when you work there. I remember last year there was a student, I asked her, there was a certain task given to calculate something. He was perfect in just writing down the formula, calculating the value. And then I said, can you explain what you did? No. This was at least a frank answer. No, I can't. I can give you the definitions. I can give you what it stands for, but I don't know anything about what it really means. And this is why I say we have different definitions of profit, for instance, and I can learn them by heart. But if I don't know which definition, which kind of profit is relevant in case A and B, then I'm lost. This is something that happens to many people, so-called qualified people as well. They are sitting in New York in the IMF. They are excellent in these things. They are just calculating things, and they are perfect in their calculations. And then a country gets bankrupt, not because they did a mistake with their calculation, but they calculated the wrong thing. And this is why I would encourage you really to try to get along with developing a deeper understanding of what economics is about. There are several kind of tales on the internet, or just using this expression of economics, mainstream standard core economics is the religion of equations. It is not, it should not be. This is what it is, how it is used. We are just using formulas, we are using equations without understanding what it is. Go into the church, there you can apply certain formulas and you just believe that it is true. But we are talking about different things. We are talking, for instance, about wage labor, and we have to understand what it is. It is not just somebody who goes to work and gets an income. But it is something where we have the wage laborer, which is, you will probably know, the double freedom, the twofold freedom, which you definitely should know, all of you. Being free in terms of being able to sell, let's use this formulation at the moment, the ability to work. He can do it. He's not, or she is not a slave. A slave cannot do it. A slave is owned by the slave owner. If the slave goes to the slave owner and says, listen, actually I would like to change the job. I would like to do something else. What will the slave owner do? There's just one answer: forget it. I own you and I decide. Wage laborer can say, no, I don't want to work here anymore. I just quit the job. I go for something else. But, and this is the second dimension of it, the necessity, free in this double sense, the necessity of selling this ability. He or she cannot work on his own. He needs other factors of production, owned as means of production by the employer, using this term. He needs a certain infrastructure, again, not owned by him herself. And for this reason, not owning it, not being in control of it, she has to sell the labor power. And it is something that developed and is, or has to be seen again in this context of the two sides of value, namely the use value, the concrete work that is undertaken, and the exchange value as a matter of something going to the market. This is the all-decisive formula, and you have to look into it. And this is as well the matter of defining at the end this productive process, this added value. Without understanding this, we won't be able to understand this division, this separate or distinction between use value and exchange value. We won't be able to understand the economic process, the core of it, the underlying process that is there. Meaning we have to look at the different forms of capital. As I said, first and foremost, capital does not equal money. You may be very rich. It does not mean that you have any capital. Capital is something there, and there are different details in the definition, but it is first and foremost something that is invested going into this process of production as matter of constant capital, means of production, productive factors. It is there invested, and it has different forms. Constant capital and variable capital at the end of the day. Now, we talked already about generating value. How do we get there? I mentioned this idea of marginality, not as technical issue, but as issue of defining the entire economic thinking. Marginal economics. What it is about is the concern with the question, where is actually, how do we reach at value? How do we get the justification of buying, selling goods for a certain price? So you have classical economics that does not look at production of value, but that actually says the value emerges from the process of exchange. And there you have still this difference between two forms of capital. The one is fixed capital, the stuff I invest into buildings, into machines. That is just my investment, and it stands there, and I can control it. This is what I can do. The worker, being free wage laborer, cannot do it. The worker does not own this. Fixed capital, physical assets. This is what I mentioned before. There is some value transferred from this, but it takes a long, long time. Depending on what we are talking about, it may be 1 year. Within this 1 year, and this is why it is a long time, you may have used it 360 times, roughly every day. So every day, a little bit of the value is transferred. Or it may be something that you can use actually over 10 years. What is transferred is even smaller. It's a technical issue and it is a value thing. And then you have looking at Smith, the circulating capital. Mind the differences. It is raw material and it is labor. And he says it is labor. You'll see why I emphasize that. The characteristic part, why it is not fixed capital, is that it quickly transfers its value. It's immediately transferred. It's immediately used, consumed in this process. As I said, fixed capital, it takes a long time to transfer this value. Circulating capital, it goes very fast. And it is, you may say, it is used immediately and completely. The timber I use to produce a table, the flour I use to produce bread, that's gone. It's completely absorbed. The stove is not. It's still there. The machine, the tools I need to produce the table, it's still there. There's a little bit transferred, but it's still there. The timber is gone, full stop. You can't use it a second time. Now, don't talk about recycling. Of course, in this way, you may use it at some stage again. but for the table, it's gone. Meaning the value, the benefit, the gain comes out of the combination of this, of fixed capital and circulating capital, to make a bargain, to be good in this combination in order to sell on the market the product most beneficial for yourself. To buy as beneficial and to sell as beneficial as possible. We have had this before with the two market sides of realization and the production. In this theory, the production doesn't add value, but the adding of value happens here. Make a bargain. Be good on the market. Buy cheap, sell expensive. Do something in the meantime. But this do something doesn't add value. Buying, selling adds value. Now we have Ricardo, Marx, and others. They say no. What is important when it comes to value, the generation of value, the production of value, is exactly this. It's production. Of course, the market plays a role. But decisive is what happens in the middle of it, what happens as part of this production. And there we have a different understanding of the capital. It's constant capital, fixed capital in Smith, but as well the raw material. Something that is used, that transfers value, and this is the part of it, the material part of value is transferred. It's not created. And then we have the variable capital. This is where actually production of value can be found. So we have this distinction within this constant capital. The fixed part. This is the fixed capital in Smith, the buildings, the infrastructure of our enterprise, that's what we invest, not the public infrastructure. And the raw material as a matter of constant circulating capital. This goes together. This is the part where value is actually transformed, transferred from one stage to another of the raw material, of the products, of what we have. And then we have variable capital that actually creates something new. The creation of value. And we had been talking about it when we talked about the development of this entire economic process, when we said it is coming from this simple exchange of goods, of two goods. First, of two goods. I have one thing, you have another thing, and we exchange this. Helped on a second stage by money. Money doesn't have anything else to do with it. We are not aiming on getting more out of this process than we put into it. Then there comes this shift towards getting more out of it. Not just exchanging use value, offering use values, making it easier by using money. Without money, I'm linked to two people. Including money into this process, I can say we have this as a kind of common language. I don't have to talk to you, but I can talk to anybody else, and they give you the information. Money the same. I don't have to exchange with everybody individually, but with money, I can do the exchange with you, and the money I get out of this, I can use in another process of transaction, which multiplies my opportunities to be economic active. Now this multiplies in terms of not only the transactions I have, but as well in terms of the outcome of this entire process. I get more commodities out of it than I put into it. And this is the aim of the game. It's not just about producing use values, but it is about producing use values for exchange. Until we arrive at the later stage of having money, being able to invest this money, buying commodities with the aim of getting more money out of it. Commodities are only a means of the end. The end is getting more money out of it. I said a later stage, and meant with it, it's not the latest stage. Whatever the latest stage is, we don't know, but the latest stage I have in mind here is this is not the financial market. The financial market is one version of this, but we have this idea a long time before. Money, invest money, buy products, meaning by means of byproductive factors, bring them together, get more money back. The financial market would be spend money, don't buy anything, invest it in financial assets, into insurance, into other financial instruments, and then get more money out of it. You have to be fast. There's a high risk. But actually, if you learn this, it's kind of easy and you can make huge profit out of it. Buy bonds, hedge funds, buy foreign currencies, all these simple things. Still, something has to be produced, and this is the core at the end of the entire process. Now let's have a little bit closer look at what actually happens in this process of production, or why it is actually possible to do it. We have had the lengthy quote before, and it is here this idea of using different terms, work and labor, where work is actually about the concrete work of producing use values, whereas labor is used in this understanding as the labor for the labor market. There we have the production of exchange values and not of use values. There's a fundamental difference. If you want to go to the IMF, you don't have to know it. If you want to know something about economics, you should know it. And you always have to think about it as a core part of it. Whatever you do, talking about marginality, talking about opportunity cost, all this is based, or for this you have to understand this major difference. Labor, in terms of what I sell on the market, the labor power actually, this is the poor left guy, who may be replaced at some stage. The worker is on the right side and says, well, fine. Now I can really work. Now I don't have to work on the market, but now I can be creative. This is work. Now I can go to the sports ground. I have time, I can work there. So the one thing is the concrete work. This is how we can work with it, how we can understand it. The one side is the concrete work, meaning the process of production as material process. This is what I do. This is producing something concrete. This is producing a table or baking a bread loaf, or it is about writing a book, providing a service, looking after children. Functional productive activity, and we are looking at different qualities. Childcare does not equal anything else. Childcare is childcare. Even looking after elderly is not the same. It's care, possibly, but it is a different thing. Concrete, qualitatively different, not comparable. I cannot compare childcare and elderly care, let alone producing a car and doing childcare. Completely different things. Individually different means that is what we face today in many discussions or see there. It is extremely difficult to standardize it. Child care, of course, we have certain standards there, but we cannot get a robot to do this. Those areas where we have least automation. Abstract work, uniform, simple, without difference. This is what we calculate, where we put the value, the exchange value on it. At the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything what I do for a living. I can work as childminder, I can work as worker in a factory producing cars. I'm only interested in this abstract aspect. And of course then I have to look at qualitatively similar societal work. I still need some way to figure out how I can compare it. This is usually what we do in terms of putting a value as money value on it. And as we will see soon, it is about the idea of making it comparable in terms of the cost of the production. As emphasized frequently, we are talking about individuals on the market, and only individuals and nothing else. This is true, this remains true, but still we have certain societal work in terms of social societal standards. It is not about what you do individually, if you are very eager, very busy, engaging, or if you are on the other extreme, very lazy. We are not interested in this, but we are talking about a kind of general standard of what is the output, how productive are you, and is this what is reflecting the societal level, the societal standard of production. Are you doing what is possible in this society? If you only have the old phone, you will not be able to perform or to perform in the same way as others certain tasks. If you have to get the map out and look further away, you won't be as fast as you are with this thing. Ideally. It may be that it brings you into the wrong place, but that's another question. So in this way, it is the average that is used, that is needed in a certain society. The idea is they have to come together. You have to translate your individual workability, the individual capability, the individual ability to perform a certain work with this general in the middle of the exchange process. And we are talking about equivalence. This is important. We won't exchange something where the value is not equivalent. You won't be able to buy a product and exchange it against something that is less valuable. Added value and surplus value are different, and then we come to the different dimensions of defining actually profit. We'll start here. The one is about the gross wage income or plus the gross profit. Meaning here we are talking about what is happening on the market. How are we performing on the market in terms of exchange? Assuming that the profit, the added value, is coming on how we perform on the market, how we perform in or when it comes to the exchange. The second version is the return on capital that had been invested. As said, we are not talking about the really added value, but we are just talking about getting more out of it. And this relates here now to the capital that had been invested. That had been invested into CF plus CC plus V, which translates into constant capital, constant circulating capital, constant fixed capital, constant circulating capital, and variable capital. We refer to the entire investment, not only to part of it. Meaning as well, we are looking at the profit and not at the profit rate. And this is the important part to understand, actually, what is going on there when we are looking at the rate of what we get out of it. The rate of the profit is actually referring to the investment and the variable capital plus the constant capital. Because this matters. At the same time, we have to consider that the rate of the profit in terms of the surplus value, what we really get out of this process, is not relating to both of them, but there we are talking about the variable capital. So added value, we look at everything that we invested. What we spent for the different kinds, all capital, the entire amount that we invested. This is relevant to look at the profit in one definition. But actually, we are not interested in the overall profit, but we want to spend as little as possible to get as much as possible out of it. And this happens looking at the relation to the variable capital. By increasing all parts, we may get a higher profit altogether. By increasing the relative part for the variable capital, we get a higher part of return on what we are investing, because this is where value is created. Meaning, if we have highly productive machines, constant capital, it is good for the overall profit, for the overall return, but in relative terms it is bad, because we get less per unit than we spend. This is the difference between the two parts of the capital, between the constant capital and the variable capital. Investing, overall investment, increasing that is good in terms of getting more out of the entire process. But what we actually gain, the real profit, is what we gain out of the variable capital. This brings us back to exactly this formula, where the profit rate is falling under the condition that the constant capital is growing faster or is growing and we have a constant variable capital. Variable capital doesn't change, constant capital increases, meaning the part we get out of this is decreasing, meaning the profit rate falls. The profit rate is related to the added value, to the productive process, to what actually is created as value. It is not coming out of transforming value from one product to another, but it is coming out of the V of the applied labor. This is important to know. This is everything when it comes to investment, where you start. Not primarily how much do I get out of this investment in absolute terms. Of course, this plays a role as well. but in terms of, is it worthwhile? How much do I actually get out per unit that I invest? This is